I've got a little confession here. My mobile phone, I have broken the screen for 3 times because I'm a bit clumsy. I remember the number of times because it's ugly, the screen stops working, and then I have to pay to fix it, and it's a real pain, and it makes me irritated with the product. These issues matter to everyone. They're pretty immediate. As you can see from the stats here, around half of people have actually cracked the screen on their phone at some point. Secondly, most people feel really helpless about this. You can't make the company sort of make a more durable phone just by buying it. And similarly with the software stuff, you can't make the company give you a software update. Most people don't even really know what those are. But policy can. And this is where Ecodesign comes in. The technology to solve the sorts of problems, to solve the broken screens, it's already here, it's on the market. Genuinely unbreakable screens are being sold, but they're not the norm, they're not commonplace. And Ecodesign can require that, what is already on the market, to become the norm. And I think more significantly, telling consumers that their phone isn't going to break anymore because of something the EU has done is populist. Most people will say, this is something that's really tangible, that EU policy has done this thing for me.
The idea that we are trying to push very strongly forward that there needs to be a broadening of the scope of Ecodesign directive in the future, full stop. Not only energy efficiency, but the other features. And there needs to be horizontal requirements, and this is my sort of a pet idea about the whole thing. All products sold in the EU, this means produced and imported, has to be upgradable. That means the phone, you could actually plan it so that you just upgrade the memory and the capacity and the program instead of throwing away all of the aluminium, metals and acrylics and whatever it contains. They need to be reusable, repairable. That's the part that irritates all of us in new gadgets, that you can't even repair them. They need to be, and 3D printing actually would come pretty handy in some of the products and all products on this. They need to be remanufacturable, and this is already something that is happening on the manufacturing industry. Of course, my pen probably couldn't be that, but so this is very dependent about what kind of products we are talking about. Mm-hmm. And lastly, they need to be recyclable both mechanically and in the longer run on molecule level. And that comes in many materials like plastics, very important that you can really recover the important parts. And if we do not set the guidelines right in politics, you can't incentivize the industries. And actually the good industries that are actually developing wonderful innovation in these fields are disadvantaged. Doesn't make sense because we are using 1.5 planets now and we would need the resources of four planets within 30 years if we do not change anything. And we know this is not going to happen. So this is basically, and this is where I would like to conclude, this is a paradigm shift. You can't make it with this kind of a gradual incremental changes like energy efficiency, as important as they are. You need to change the regulatory framework.
This can only be solved at a number of different levels working together. It's no good just having, as I say, that global leadership at the top. You need to have an entire industrial strategy. You need to have an entire economy that's geared up to allow the supply chains to be part of it. And that requires not just leadership at the top, but an understanding of the direction of travel that everybody's going in. For example, we've often talked about the conflict between economic growth and the green economy and being green, and it's always been portrayed as a clash. You know, you can't have one with the other. You either grow your economy or you save the planet. You can't do both. Of course, that's a nonsense. Because countries like China and the United States and obviously the European Union working together have indeed come up with ideas to ensure that we get green growth, to ensure that we evaluate our economic base to ensure we have low carbon growth, more jobs, more innovation, etc., etc., etc. It's obvious, or it should be obvious in a post-industrial climate, that that is the way in which we create new and more highly skilled jobs, and that applies, of course, in as much to eco-design as it does to any other element of the supply chain. The problem, of course, is that selling that is now going to become much, much harder.
And for my business, if I think about it from a business perspective, we're a business that has prided itself on taking quite a long-term environmental, sustainable agenda in a number of spaces. So we've pioneered responsible sourcing of timber, actively involved in European timber regulations, etc. But if I talk about it in my business, that will connect to the people who care about the environment, but that's not the majority of people. This also then leads into the consumer perspective as well. So it is, how do you make it relevant to their world? How do you make it of interest and connection to them? And that's fundamentally important. So I'm just going to have to react to what Seb was saying there about the roles of business and government and NGOs, and everyone needs to stand up about to challenge this going forwards. My problem is that we've all been on the wrong side of the debate, and that we're not reflecting the realities of what is the majority of people's lives who feel deeply disconnected from all of this stuff. And that's the challenge, is how do we actually appreciate that and understand that and change that? And I don't have a great solution for that now, obviously, but you know, we've clearly, European business, we had a clear view about Brexit as well. Now we're taking a very pragmatic view about how do you take it forward. And like you, I think on the European standards, you're right. Wherever the UK stands, we're a business that sources and sells products across multiple markets. We will match a common standard. REACH regulations, we adapt to REACH globally. Not just about Europe, it's about global, because it's just the most practical, cost-effective way to do it. And if it's practical and cost-effective, then it's probably pretty good for the consumer. And that, I think, go back to Dustin's point at the start, is absolutely fundamental. The consumer piece, really understanding what works for consumers and also what they're interested in. So in my business, we've done quite a lot of research this year around sustainability. What do consumers think about it? And the harsh reality is most of them don't really think about it. They've got really busy lives. They're trying to raise families. They're trying to hold down to their job. So I do have that question about when can you just sort stuff out that just makes everything consistently better? And back to your point as well about a level playing field, raising all the ships in the ocean, because there is so much that a single business can do. But then how do you bring it so that everybody plays in the same field? And I think that helps a lot. And then the challenge is, though, how do you make it relevant to consumers? So energy labels are good, but energy labels can be also misconstrued because they are very simple as well. So that's another part of the challenge. What do you need to involve consumers in that clearly benefits them? But coming at it from a consumer framing is perfect.
My question's on Brexit, as a UK national as well as an Irish national. From an eco-design perspective, what sort of Brexit are you looking for?
So from my point of view, the only way to avoid falling off an economic cliff is to stay in the single market. Our manufacturing industry depends on it. Our services industry absolutely depends on it. And if we fell back on some sort of WTO tariff free trade agreement that would take years, and in the current climate, let's face it, would look pretty unlikely to be successful, we would potentially be hiking up the cost of doing business in the UK and setting ourselves back massively, which is why I think on the eco-design point, we need to be as integrated as possible. In effect, if we leave the European Union, it has to be the closest relationship to the one we currently have as is possible, which means staying in the single market. And that would, of course, have a limited impact on the UK's ability to not just innovate and drive design, but to be a world leader as well, given its access to the European market, given its ability to sell its ideas and products, and to be part of a Europe-wide drive on eco-design, even if it can't be at the decision-making table. Obviously, I would argue that's a loss, but we are where we are.